Today we're going to talk about the Comprehensive Assessment of Spoken Language, also known as the CASL or CASL. The CASL is a norm-referenced oral language assessment battery of tests for children and young adults aged 3 through 21 years. The battery is designed to measure the processes of comprehension, expression, and retrieval in 4 different language categories. The CASL includes a manual, a separate norms book, a presentation video, 2 record forms, a test book 1, which contains lexical and semantic tests, test book 2, which has syntactic tests, test book 3, which has supralinguistic and pragmatic tests. These are the record forms. Record form 1 is used for ages 3 to 6, and record form 2 is used for ages 7 through 21.
The 4 language categories that are included in the CASL are the lexical semantic category, which assesses knowledge and use of words and word combinations. The next one is syntactic category, which assesses knowledge and use of grammar, and that includes morphology and syntax. The supralinguistic category measures comprehension of complex language in which meaning is not directly available from lexical or grammatical information. The pragmatic category measures awareness of the appropriateness of language in relation to the situation in which it is used and ability to modify the language to the situation. So the 4 language categories have core and supplementary tests, and there are 15 in total. The lexical semantic category has the comprehension of basic concepts, antonyms, synonyms, sentence completion, idiomatic language. And then syntactic category has syntax construction, paragraph comprehension of syntax, grammatical morphemes, sentence comprehension of syntax, and grammaticality judgment. The supralinguistic category has non-literal language, meaning from context, inference, ambiguous sentences, and then the pragmatic has the pragmatic judgment, and we will talk about each of these in these following slides. Okay, the first one is basic concepts, and this one, the purpose is to measure the auditory comprehension of words that refer to basic perceptual and conceptual relationships. So an example of this is that the examiner shows a picture, like this picture on the side, and says, point to the big dog, or show me the big dog. And the child would point to the correct picture. In this case, it would be picture number 4. This test is a core test for age band 3 to 4 and is a supplementary test for age band 5 to 6. And that means that the supplementary test that is optional for the ages 5 to 6. Okay, the next one is synonyms. It measures knowledge of the meaning of spoken words in a linguistically decontextualized environment. And so for this one, the examiner reads a stimulus word aloud and reads the examinee 4 words from which to choose the correct synonym. So an example is, I might say that the word is shout, and then I would read 4 options such as clean, yell, read, play, and then the child would respond to me with the synonym, which in this case it would be yell. This is a core test for ages 13 to 21 and a supplementary test for ages 7 to 12. Antonyms, this one measures word knowledge, retrieval, and oral expression in a linguistically decontextualized environment. For this one, the examiner presents stimulus words within the carrier phrase. So this example is, tell me the word that means the opposite of stop. And so I would say either stop and the child should say go or start, because those are the opposite. It is a core test for ages 5 to 12 and is a supplementary test for ages 13 to 21. Okay, so the sentence completion This one measures the ability to retrieve and express one of the few appropriate words that fit the meaning of a spoken sentence. So the examiner reads aloud a brief description with a word missing at the end. The examinee must respond with the word to complete the sentence. So an example is Tim sleeps in a, and I show this picture, and the child should say bed. And for this one, the first 12 items have pictures, but then the rest are just presented orally. Supplementary tests for six different age bands. So this covers ages 3 through 21. There's no core test for this. Idiomatic language measures the knowledge, retrieval, and oral expression of idioms. It measures ability to differentiate common idioms from literal rendering of words. For example, an idiom like, it's raining cats and dogs. So the examiner will explain the meaning of idioms first, and then will say a sentence containing an idiom with the last part omitted to see if the client can finish the idiom. For example, don't cry over spilled, and then see if the client can say spilled milk. Idioms are scaled in order of difficulty, so they get harder throughout. And this is a supplementary test for ages 11 to 21. Okay, syntax construction assesses the ability of the examinee to generate sentences using a variety of morphosyntactic rules and emphasizes the use of rules to formulate and express sentences. So there are different tasks for this one. For the younger children, they're different than for the older adolescents. So imitation would simply be imitating a sentence that I say. Or complete sentences using phrases, I would start off the sentence and the child would finish with 2 or 3 words to finish. Answer questions to elicit specific syntactic forms. Formulate sentences when telling a story, like I might tell a story, and then the child would respond with what might happen next. Use a model sentence to generate a similar one. And then for adolescents, they're going to be a little tougher, like formulating an expression of sentence structures with more than a single phrase or clause. Structures incorporating cohesive words in a series of sentences, and sentences incorporating compound structures. And this is a core test for ages 3 to 10, but then it's supplementary for ages 11 to 21 for the adolescents. All right, and then paragraph comprehension measures auditory comprehension of syntax by means of a series of spoken narratives. For this, an example would be, or the task for this one is examinee listens to the examiner reading a story and questions about the paragraph. So the examinee responds by pointing to the correct picture. So an example is, I am a little girl. My name is Anna. I like to play with dolls. I like my big doll best. My big doll has no hair. And so the question is, which toy does Anna like to play with? So from these pictures, the child should answer with number 4. And this is a core test for ages 5 to 10 and a supplementary test for age bands 3 to 4 and then 11 to 12.
The next subtest is called grammatical morphemes. The purpose is that it uses analogies to measure metalinguistic knowledge and use of the form and meaning of grammatical morphemes. So for the task, the test is structured in the form of analogies. The examinee must recognize the semantic relationship between the first pair of words in order to respond correctly when given the first word of the second pair. So for example, the examiner would say, bed is to beds as dress is to, and then the examinee would respond, dresses. This is a core test for ages 11 to 12 and a supplementary test for age bands 7 to 10, 13 to 17, and 18 to 21. Sentence comprehension. The purpose is that it measures auditory recognition of whether sentence pairs with different structures have the same or different meaning. For the task, the examinee listens to the model sentence and the first syntactically different rendition of the model sentence and says whether or not they have the same meaning. Then the examinee listens again with a second different sentence. So, for example, I would say, the examiner would say, Mary's books fell. the books that belonged to Mary fell. And then they would ask the examiner if the meanings are the same or if they're different. And for the second set of sentences, the examiner would say, Mary's books fell, Mary and her books fell, and ask if those have the same meaning. This is a core test for ages 11 to 12 and a supplementary test for ages 13 to 21. Grammaticality judgment, the purpose is that it measures judgment of and ability to correct sentence grammar. This includes noun-verb agreement, noun number, verb tense, pronouns, negatives, prepositions, irregular forms, direct or indirect objects, active and passive voice, and embedding. The task is that the examiner reads aloud a sentence and asks the examinee if it is grammatically correct. If it is not correct, the examinee must respond no and fix it by changing one word without changing the meaning. So for example, the examiner would say, he catched the ball, and the examinee would respond, no, he caught the ball. Grammaticality judgment is a core test for ages 13 to 21 and a supplementary test for ages 7 to 12. Non-literal language, the purpose is that it measures understanding of the meaning of spoken messages independent of literal interpretation. The examiner reads aloud a sentence or sentences containing a non-literal expression followed by a question, such as, what does that mean? The examinee responds by explaining what it means. For example, Jenny said, I feel like an ice cube. What does that mean? And the examinee would say that she is cold. Non-literal language is a core test for ages 7 to 21. Meaning from context, the purpose is that it measures derivation of the meaning of words from their oral linguistic context. The task is that the examiner reads aloud a sentence and asks the examinee what the target word means. For example, there was no one in the room, so the child must have been talking to a fictive friend. What does fictive mean? And the examinee would say a pretend or imaginary friend. This is a core test for ages 13 to 21 and a supplementary test for ages 11 to 12. Inference, the purpose is that it measures use of previously acquired world knowledge to derive meaning from inferences. The task is that the examiner presents a 2 or 3 sentence episode or schema and asks a question. The examinee must infer the answer from the linguistic statement and his or her own knowledge. For example, Mandy wanted to wear last year's dress to school one day, but when she tried it on, she could not wear it. Why? And the examinee would say that she had grown or it did not fit her anymore. This is only a supplementary test for ages 7 to 17. Ambiguous sentences, the purpose is that it measures auditory comprehension of words, phrases, and sentences that have more than one meaning. The task is that the examiner reads aloud a sentence to be interpreted by the examinee in 2 different ways. The examinee must explain in his or her own words what both meanings are. For example, the examiner would say, it is light. And the examinee would respond that light could be as in color or as in weight. This is a supplementary test for ages 11 to 21. Pragmatic judgment, it measures knowledge and use of pragmatic language rules and judgment of their appropriate application. The task is for the examiner to read a description of a specific situation and ask the examinee to supply the appropriate language for the situation. For example, suppose the telephone rings, you pick it up, what do you say? And the examinee would say, hello. This is a core test for all ages 3 to 21 and pictures are presented for younger children.
Okay, the CASL provides types of scores to determine the individual's performance, and so there are several different scores. You can get a raw score, which are the correct points that are added together, And then the standard scores starts with a median at 100 and then a standard deviation of 15. The category and processing index scores, these are placed into the 4 different language categories. There are also percentile ranks and normal curve equivalents. We also get test age equivalents for the children, and then also a core composite, and this is for select subtests depending on the age band. And then the reliability and validity. The test manual has reliability for internal consistency and test-retest reliability, in which they found that all core composites, the reliabilities are in the 0.90s, ranging from 0.92 for the youngest examinees to 0.96 for the older, and that is good. And then the validity, they use construct validity, and this is where they look at the development of scores and subtests and the indexes and how they are valid together, the clinical validity, and the criterion-related validity. And with those, that was to ensure that they were all valid when compared to other language assessments, and that they were accurately measuring the difference between the clinical children, the clinical group, and then the normative group. The general impressions that we had were that the test was very lengthy and difficult to score because of the different categories and age bands, and the pictures are not very kid-friendly, as you might have noticed. It is difficult to learn due to the large number of subtests, but the CASL is flexible because although there are 15 subtests, they are specific to the age band, so not all of them are used, and then the supplementary tests are optional. So overall, it appears to be a thorough assessment of language, but difficult to learn. However, sensitivity and specificity were not discussed in the manual, so it is a bit difficult to know completely the accuracy of detecting those with disorders and those without disorders.